Adventurers, welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots, and I'm here with my good buddy, Lotus. Lotus, I've got a question for you.
All right, I'm ready. What is the question?
Just throwing stuff out there. We're going to see if you can answer the question. All right, pronounce this word. Are you ready? Y''FFRE.
Yifri?
Are you sure?
I am.
You are sure? Okay, because I looked this up because that's how I pronounce it too. The name Ifre?
Yeah.
Something like that, right? Somewhere in there?
Tell me you have like a Google pronunciation.
There are debates. There are debates on the internet, of course. There's a Reddit post where somebody posted this, and the most upvoted response was Jeffrey.
Yes.
Like, was that a joke or?
Yes.
I mean, maybe it's Efri. Like, it could be Efri. It could be Ifri, right? Like, it's somewhere in there.
The ancient god Jeffrey.
The ancient god Jeffrey. Why does this make any sense? Why is this something that we're talking about today? Today, friends, adventurers, we are talking about the Green Pact. We're going over to Bosmerland. We're going to go visit our short little elven friends, and we're gonna talk about how weird they are. Lotus, this was a suggestion you came up with. You were like, "Hey, we haven't done this. We should talk about the Green Pact."
So I was, we finished all of our situations with the Daedric princes, and then we got the Spooktober thing done. And I was trying to think, like, what do we tackle now, because we need some new topics. And
sure.
I was trying to think of something that we hadn't delved into, but that's referenced a lot. And again, that this just seems like something that's actually pretty important to a lot of things. And we reference it, other places, it's just referenced a lot, and we haven't really gone into explaining exactly what it is. So it seemed like a good place to start. Right.
Well, another good place to start is with Ifre, or like Rob the Princess says, Jeffrey, or Yiffer. Yiffer.
In fact, at this point, we should just Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff. Just good old Jeff. The Khajiit spell it like Yiffer, which looks like Yiffer, which is funny because of furries, but whatever. Well, you pronounce it however you want. It's just gonna be fine. But
it's fine. It's all fine. So we had this discussion on Tales where all names are made up, as are all words. When they're specific to a work of fiction, it's really up for grabs unless the person writing it says it, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And there are lots of authors who have co-written parts of these games over the years.
Correct. So, and even the NPCs oftentimes use weird different dialects. So we're going to use our dialect to say it as however you would like to say it. And I will say Yifri.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here let's start with the quote from the Ooze, a fable, because this is going to give us a foundation. Remember, this is mythological type works here. There's a lot of questions of it. Is this literal? Is it symbolic? Usually errs on the side of symbolic, but this is according to the Ooze, and I believe we talked about the Ooze before, but here goes. But we'll call it Jeffrey. But Jeffrey took the ooze and ordered it. First, she told of the green, the forest, and all the plant life in it. She gave the green the power to shape itself as it willed. Hold on to that idea, because it's interesting. For it was her first tale. The elves were Jeffrey's second tale. As Jeffrey spun the story, the elves took the form they have today. Notice the elves took the form. They chose it. The elves they didn't get the form placed on them. They took it.
No, because they're one with their god ancestors, as we need to listen to constantly in game.
Right. Jeffrey gave them the power to tell stories, but warned them against trying to shape themselves or the green. So clearly they have the ability to shape themselves and the green, the forest, and the land they live in, right? Shifting and the destruction of the forest were forbidden. Instead, Jeffrey commanded the wood elves to the green so that they might ask the green to provide them with shelter and a safe passage. And as long as they respected the green, it would obey. So we have here their connection to Jeffrey, Ifre.
I can hear and feel people seething, constantly calling it Jeffrey.
Oh my God. I'm going to get so many letters. People are going to be like, that was the worst episode ever.
Why do you keep calling it Jeffrey?
Why? So I think we have to go into a little bit of who, we'll just say Ifre is. Ifre,
we'll go with Ifre.
Or Jeffrey, or Ifer. The singer, the storyteller, the god of song and force, the spirit of the now, and the Green Man is the most important deity of the Bosmiri pantheon, also worshipped by the Altmer Bretons and Snow Elves, interestingly enough. She was one of the strongest of the recognizable spirits that crystallized shortly after the beginning of time and played an important role in the coalescing of the physical world during the Dawn era. So this is interesting because we've talked a lot about the divines, and we've talked a lot about the Daedric princes, and sometimes in these stories you get a character who's very powerful who does something like this that is just another name for a Daedric prince. Like maybe this was
right.
Yeah, like this isn't. You might think maybe this is somebody like Hircine in disguise. It's not. This is a different entity altogether, and
right.
It's actually tied closer to the Elnofe and the Earthbones and those kinds of things. So
right.
This is very unique, especially to the Bosmeri people and the Bretons and the Snow Elves, who also reference this being, whatever kind of being it is. It's some sort of great and powerful ancient being. So that's the foundation of this, is that they can trace their lineage back to this agreement with Ifre. And this agreement meant that, one, they were to live harmoniously with the green, with the land and the plant life in that land. And two, that they're not supposed to change their shape, even if they can, which
that's a big no-no that gets a little dicey in some certain situations, talking about Hircine specifically when, we get into the potential for shape-shifting as part of being a were creature. That can kind of make things a little murky when it comes to that situation.
Right. So there's a few different ways somebody can change their shape in the world of the Elder Scrolls, that you can become a were creature. You can use magic to do it. But then there's also the ability of the Bosmer to just choose to change their shape, it seems. It seems that some of them just simply have the ability to will it.
Right.
Which is crazy.
It is. And it's interesting because this originally, when I suggested this, it didn't really specifically intend to tie into ESO the way it currently has in the actual
the fire,
right? The season that we're in, and as the time of this recording, the final DLC zone for the
Fire
season of the Breton
Island,
Fire Song,
Fire Town
just launched, and as an effect of one of the last dungeons, you're dealing a lot with druids, the druids of Galen, which
the story starts out with druids, even in like the pre-story where it takes you back to the mainland.
Exactly.
You're dealing with druids.
The reason it's kind of worth mentioning this whole situation with the Breton heritage at the moment is you have the druids, and there's the weird and these nature magic things that relate to the series, but very specifically in one of the dungeons, it's actually called Earthenroot Enclave, that came out pretty recently. But the end boss and several of the druids shapeshift. They literally shift into like werebears. So it's like it is a thing that some people in the Elder Scrolls can do, and it just happens to be that Bosmer seem to be slightly more prone to it or adept to it. I wonder if it has like the stronger the connection to nature, if that's where you kind of get this linking, because it seems like it's the cultures that are strongly related to nature that have the ability to do this.
It's like it's a power that's bestowed on them from nature itself, or from these nature beings.
Yeah,
it may
like
not
a connection you almost get through nature.
Yeah, it may not be genetically something that they're predisposed to do, because they're elves. Why couldn't other elves do it? Well, we don't hear about other elves doing that. Like if you talk to Dunmer and you'd be like, well, why don't you shapeshift? They'd be like, I'm not a sorcerer. I mean, if I was a sorcerer,
I don't want to do it right now.
Or if I was a werewolf, sure. But like, what? Wait, everyone can just shapeshift? No, that's not a thing.
Right.
It wouldn't make any sense. And so, yeah, maybe there's something about the cultural connection here. I wanted to read this paragraph out of the UESP, the article about the Green Pact on them, and specifically on the Green Pact. It says here, the Bosmer allegedly made the Green Pact with Y'ffre in return for Y'ffre's patronage and protection. As a result, they use bone, animal, and insect products widely. So the agreement was don't harm the plants, but the animals are fair game. Yeah. Imported wood is used when necessary. Fair game. That's true. I bet that's where that phrase actually comes from, is from hunting or something. But they can import wood from other places. It's like as long as they themselves are not damaging the wood directly, like the plant life directly, then that's okay. But they can buy it secondhand. So, all right.
Sure. And it's like, I would assume that also means like, oh, this tree branch fell off. If you step on the stick and it breaks, that's not the same as like I snapped a branch.
It's already dead. You didn't fell the tree. Because it's already
dead, or it's separated from the host entity, because they kind of view them as more than just, plants. It's like, okay, well, these are entities all around us. So
these are creatures. These are beings.
Exactly.
So it goes on. It says, rather than drinking conventional liquor made from grain or fruit, the Bosmer consume jaga, fermented pig's milk, yum yum, and rot meth.
Ugh.
Rot meth. We haven't talked much about rot meth.
We haven't talked about rot meth, and we might as well, since I don't think there's going to be a better time to talk about rot meth than now.
Yeah. So we at least have to cover what it is. Rot meth is made from fermented meat seasoned with thunderbug organs. Yum yum. Takes years to brew and is considered a precious ritual beverage that symbolizes the muscle of the boar, the power of the forest, and the strength of the Bosmer people. So it's like mead for Nords, but way grosser.
Way grosser, because I like mead. I don't think I would try rot meth.
Right. No wedding can take place without it. Did you know that? Y'ffre is believed to have first blessed them with their form. That's what we just talked about in the ooze story. Thus, their appearance is sacred. So, although Bosmer may take the shape of beasts, the pact normally bans this practice. However, the wild hunt is considered a result of the Green Pact. In return for their patronage to Y'ffre, the Bosmer may perform a ritual in dire times that transforms the participants into a horde of wild, shape-shifting beasts, which go on to lay waste to the enemies of the Bosmer. This is the one time that shape-shifting is okay.
Yes, and it's sort of okay. Because it's really... it's...
Well, it's the one time that Y'ffre is okay with it. We should say it like that. But it is a messed up thing to do.
Yes, which we'll have to get into more. But it is, it's one of those situations where the side effects are so extreme. It's basically allowed, but as a side effect of it, it gets real screwed up.
We're going to talk, we're saving this for the next episode, so we'll get deeper into the wild hunt. But there's no way of talking about one without talking about the other, right?
Right. We'll get into it, because that one's, honestly, it probably gets a little more explicit taggy than this will be, because the wild hunt is quite a thing in the lore.
Quite a thing in the lore. So here, people have been enjoying us quoting from the books and actually like reading some of the books. Yeah. So I have some of the books here to read through, and I was going to put them up on the screen. So if you're watching the live version, or if you want to check out the live version, youtube.com/@ Elder Scrolls Lorecast, because now there's like tags on YouTube, or just search Elder Scrolls Lorecast on YouTube, or join us for the live stream. Welcome, live streamers. Here, let me put this up on the screen. And this is one of the key works where we get another solid base description of what's going on here. It's called The Green Pact and the Dominion, a discussion of how the Green Pact affects the Dominion. Just like trees grow toward the sun and you can hear different birds singing when the moons are out than when they are not, every wood elf born in Valenwood, and indeed nearly everyone born outside of it, knows of the Green Pact. The Green Pact is the agreement where the wood elves in Yffrey that has guided our existence from the beginning of the great story. Its rules are clear. Do not harm the forest. Do not eat anything made from plant life. Eat only meat. When you conquer your enemies, eat their flesh.
That is intense recycling.
Yes. Do not leave them to rot. Do not kill wastefully. Do not take on the shape of beasts. You are wood elves. Your form is sacred. This is the Green Pact. In exchange for keeping this pact, the forest, which we call the Green, has provided us with ample food and shelter. Yffrey has given us the limited gift to ask the forest to shape itself to our needs. Very cool. It's part of why their trees are so interesting and dynamic in that part of the world. Well,
they're also able to live in them like literal huts and houses because the trees shape around them. It's not even like they need to cut them down to then build a house. They can essentially work with nature to form a house as opposed to needing to oppress nature to become something that they need, which is very unique to this region, sort of. Well, I guess it's also similar. It's a similar idea with the Dunmer, specifically like the Telvanni and a lot of their mushroom houses.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's like a symbiotic existence between them.
It's a symbiotic relationship with nature as opposed to like, yeah, we need this, so we're just going to pillage away right now.
Right. So it goes on and says, we have been amply blessed, but now we find ourselves in a new situation. Our new allies, the High Elves and the Khajiit, do not hold to the Green Pact. They live in houses made of thatch and timber. They eat all manner of fruits and berries and drink wine made from grapes. They find the devouring of one's enemies barbaric. Imagine that. And then it goes on to ask questions about like, how are we going to get along with them? And this is one of those documents that was written and included in the early version of the game because this was one of the zones you could go to. There was this pact between all the different, and this happened for all three groups, is you have this grouping of these different cultures that have to get along with each other. And so you end up with some of these documents that are like, we're so different from them. How is this going to work out? This is one of those documents.
Yeah.
So, but this very clearly states, eat your enemies, like kill them and then eat them, which totally changes your perspective, your perspective of some of the nice little wood elf friends that we make in the game. I mean, think about it.
I mean, just because they're small doesn't mean they can't devour a lot.
Right. They're like cute and small, and we're like, I'm wood elf. Like, what's her name from that previous year's stuff? The wood elf girl.
Yes.
Evely?
Evely Sharp Arrow.
Yeah. Like she's so cute and kind of, I don't know, just easygoing, la 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 la, right? But if she follows the Green Pact, that means that when she goes with you to kill things, she's
when she takes
them.
somebody out, theoretically she eats them.
She should be like running around with you, eating things that she kills.
Yes. Unless she doesn't follow the Green Pact. She doesn't, if I don't remember her specifically making a lot of references to it. So
I don't think she does.
Yeah.
But the idea is there that could totally be a thing, and holy moly. Now, I have a concept here. You know me. I think big on this stuff. And my theory about why this stuff is so weird has to do with the difference between writing content for things that are outside the main scope of the thing you're writing, as opposed to writing content for things that are within the scope of what you're writing. What am I saying? So let's think back to the way the games were developed. We have Arena, which was kind of pre a lot of the lore.
Sure.
Then we have Daggerfall, located in a human
a lot of it
settlement.
Gets formed and starts to form on the framework that was given in Elder Scrolls 1 Arena.
Right. So Daggerfall, and we're just doing the main game. So Daggerfall, then we have, and that's very human area, right? Like,
yes.
Like Middle Ages Europe, human, as normal as you possibly can get into our own world, at least in some period of time. Then we have Morrowind, Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, super weird, alien landscape, super weird, Dunmer stuff. But then Oblivion and Skyrim, both Mannish locations. The Imperials and the Nords, very Mannish. And if you think about where we think Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be, High Rock, another Mannish location. Most of the main stories of these games have been designed around the things that we find to be more common and normal. So when the lore of stuff like the Green Pact shows up in those stories, it feels like this foreign thing from real far away. And yeah, we're never really going to have to explain it. We're never really going to have a game where you're actually over there and that's the main focus of the game. And it is fine. It's fine. And then you get something like Elder Scrolls Online and they're like, we're just going to let you go everywhere and you get to learn about all the cultures. And all of a sudden you have to take some of this lore, which sounds super weird and sideways and mysterious because we just kind of run into wood elves every so often. We're not ever going to play one really, you know? And yeah, you get to choose to build a character, but it's different, right? Because you're in a different place.
Right.
And then now all of a sudden they have to go, okay, well now we got to explain it. And so it has that feeling of being the thing that, like, when seen at a distance and off in the periphery of the story is like mysterious and weird. And you're like, yeah, that's so weird. But when you actually have to like be in that, it feels really uncomfortable.
Yes. And it's the same way that a lot of these ideas have steadily started to become more and more shown
but also toned down
a little bit. Yeah. They're kind of reined in a little bit because something that's gone, quote unquote, at the time of ESO, and, you know, probably because it would be a monumental task to show. I'm not really sure what their plans ever really will be if there's a point where you have to physically see them. But the Falanesti, which are like the walking tree cities.
Yeah.
That's
and the upside down tree village. There's a whole vision.
Right.
Like I'm saving that story until the end.
Yeah. That's why I want to. It's like it's very. It gets weird.
Right. So that's why in my head canon, this is the stuff of mythology. Even the elves themselves, even the wood elves themselves, the Bosmer, most of them probably see this as like religious symbolism and mythology and from another time, right? And maybe there's a certain amount of it that actually does work because, guess what? We're going to end up with some quests and, you know, like the Wild Hunt actually happens at some point. And so you go, okay, well, maybe there is some truth to this because magic, right? Like the world is magical.
Yeah, I was going to say magic is a good MacGuffin when you need one.
Right. But for the most part, they've learned to start living in a more civilized kind of world. And so this is still in some ways off on the periphery. That's my headcanon way of handling it. But I think the truth of the matter is if we had gotten a location like this with a culture like this that was super ingrained in some of these old traditions and the weirdness of it, I think the developers thought it would probably be kind of off-putting to delve too deeply into that.
Probably because some of the stuff with this is more extreme when it comes to the mythos of it as opposed to it being seen in practice, like you said. Mm-hmm. So like it's one of those things where in real life, is it an embellishment or as actually Rob mentioned in chat, did they kind of rein it in because of game limitations? And again,
family friendliness. I mean, there's a certain amount. It's one thing to joke. More
palatable.
Yeah.
The Elder Scrolls is definitely like a dark world, but it does try to at least be accessible on the surface, and some of the more dark aspects tend to be a little more. You got to search for them a bit more.
Yeah, they're a little hidden behind some things. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this series has become more mainstream with the popularity of Skyrim,
also very true,
Elder Scrolls Online, and those kinds of things. So they're trying to balance that a little bit. If all of a sudden they pushed it into a hard like M rating, people might be upset. They're like, I play this with my kid and he's 12. What are you doing?
Right. I mean, to be fair, it is already an M-rated game, so I oftentimes,
but it's not like a hard.
It's not. That's exactly it. I feel like it's just enough to get the M rating, but it's not doubling down on trying to get it, unless you want to get into some weird deep lore stuff where some of it is like, okay, well, that's all over the place. But for the most part, yes, it's they don't oftentimes go out of their way to earn the M rating.
Right. And I think that they've become more and more careful with it. So, for example, like in the older games where you had like topless characters, but of course they were made out of like 128 sprites, like the little squares of color. So it was like, it doesn't really matter that much. But once you actually get to like modeled characters, then that's for the place of modders. We're going to let the modders take care of that if they want that in their game. They're not going to put that in the game directly. And Rob, I think you're right that we're not ever going to see directly a wild hunt. There's definitely wild hunts that happen and then are referred to having happened in and around the events of some of the quest lines and stories. But I don't think we're ever going to see one. I think that's to that point. It's the same thing. We've talked about vampires and how that stuff works, and a lot more of it is alluded to as opposed to ever graphically seeing any of these things. It's more like, yes, this is here, but no, they don't dwell on it type of deal. And that's always kind of how I feel they've handled it to keep it a little more accessible to the masses, as opposed to being like, oh, wow, okay, that got real dark. Right. Well, here, tell you what, we're going to take a break. We're going to thank our patrons. We've got a new review to read out, and then we're going to come back. We've got a few more of the core texts about the Green Pact that I think will be interesting to go over. So don't go anywhere.
This is Hamis Morak, Dragonborn, and you are educating yourself to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast.
All right, here we are. We're back, and it's time to thank our patrons. Patrons, you guys are amazing. We've got a bunch of new patrons in this last week that we need to welcome on board. Macy P, Christopher C, Blake P, Matt F, AJH, let's see, going to some others, Umbra Mortem, interesting name, Dan P, and N4G. Welcome aboard. Thank you for your support. We really do appreciate it. And that gets us up to 108 currently, 108 patrons.
Wow.
Yeah. And we got to call out our Daedric Princes, our two Daedric Princes, Kira C and Noodle Al Dente. Thank you for supporting us at the tier 5 level. And thank you to all of you. If you're interested in checking out what you can get, everything from ad-free episodes at the lowest tiers to t-shirts and stickers to joining us on chat episodes in the future, all of that stuff. Check out the different tiers. There's all sorts of goodies that you can get. And if you want to do so, go to patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast. And that's the easy way to see what's on there. We also have a new review that came in this last week from the Villain BG. Villain, what's up, dude? Villain's been part of our community for a long time.
Yeah.
Villain, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Villain's from Canada and writes, amazing show to binge. Ended up bringing this binging this podcast during quarantine and absolutely loved it. Not sure if it was Stockholm syndrome as I had nothing else to listen to. High praise, Villain thinks.
Actually, no, I feel like that pretty much encompasses most of what I do.
Yeah, but you do it to yourself. Anyway, moving on. But the hosts are amazing and keep up the great work, Tom and Lotus. Definitely worth checking out. And if you like Elder Scrolls, cheers, the Villain BG. Villain, thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And anybody else who takes the time to leave us a 5-star rating with a review on Apple Podcasts, you will get read out on a future episode of the show. Even if you don't listen on Apple Podcasts, I know it used to be the place most people listened, but most people listen on
Spotify has kind of taken over that department.
Yeah. But even if you just have an account, you can log in and leave a review, and that still helps out because people search stuff and that stuff comes up in search. Or you can leave a review on, or a rating at least.
I was going to say, thank you for all the stars on Spotify.
Thank you very much. You guys are the best. Well, that's it for the middle of the show. We won't take any more of your time. Let's get back to the rest of the Green Pact stuff.
You're listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, dear child of cities. That is why the Night Mother loves you.
Thank you, Night Mother. So we're back. All right. So this needs to be discussed a little bit. We got the Green Pact. You have the traditions of the Bosmer, and many Bosmer who side with that because of this tradition and belief in Ifre and all of that. But you have some that dissent. And we have a quick little book here called Why We Farm, the final word on an imprisoned Bosmer who broke the Green Pact. And it goes like this. Now that we have been banished to this cave, there is little for us to do but chronicle the reasons we have been forced here. It distracts us from the hunger, and we will not break and eat our own kin as our disgusting brethren outside do. They're putting up a moral objection to that.
Tell us how you really feel.
We Bosmer, though they call us apostates, seek to join the rest of the world in modern civilized thought. We do not wish to be tree-worshipping primitives any longer. To that end, we did what to our cousins who imprisoned us here, or in here, is unthinkable. We farmed. Dun, dun, dun. We planted and sowed, and were going to harvest until we were found out and cast down here beneath the surface to die for our transgressions against the Green Pact. We did not agree to the Green Pact. Our ancestors did long ago, yet we must live by the consequences. We cannot even make our own bows thanks to this ridiculous agreement. Solid point. Totally weird, right?
A little strange when you think about some of the finer aspects of it.
Yeah, yet we can buy them from other people. For us, to chop down trees is blasphemy, but to pay someone else to do it is fine, right? Totally weird. This hypocrisy is ridiculous, and we refused to be bound by it. For our refusal, we die.
So that is one of the things that I have found interesting. It's not that they can't use it. It's that they can't do it themselves, which is very strange, where it's just like...
Mm-hmm.
Their direct connection is strange, that it doesn't prohibit the idea of it. Mm-hmm. It's just the connection specifically to them doing it. It's like...
This happens in a lot of religious contexts in the real world.
Yes, it's very neat because it does. It has a lot of like real parallels to certain religious contexts to that.
Right, like
and
you can't do this
hypocrisy.
thing. Right, you can't do this thing, but the people who believe that find a workaround in order to get someone else to do it for them, right, or something like that. And I don't want to call out specific religions. I don't want to point any fingers.
No,
But this is a very real thing, and to this individual's point, it misses the spirit of the message.
Right.
Just because you can stick to the letter and do it this way doesn't mean that fulfills the spirit of what is assumed here.
It's taking it as literally as possible. Literally, I can't do this. It doesn't matter if it gets done.
Right.
It's just I can't be responsible for it.
Right. And like, I can be indirectly responsible. And somehow that's okay. Like it's just silly. It's one of those things. So
it's that extra step to separate yourself from the thing you're opposed to. Suddenly, the separation is enough that you feel disconnected from it in a way that it's like, well, now I'm not really actually responsible, which is interesting.
But you still are. You still kind of are. Like when it comes down to it.
And the
it's
only
so
thing,
weird.
this is actually. Well, it's referenced in several books, but we don't need to go on a huge tangent on it. But just like a quick note about the 5-Year War, which you can find it specifically referenced in A Dance in Fire and stuff like that. But it's kind of a war that breaks out between the Khajiit and the Bosmer over wood caravans. It's debated on how it gets started, but one of the things that I found kind of amusing is how basically the Khajiit give no F's about the wood in the Tenmar forest, and they're like, you know what, we want to build our temple out of this sacred wood, so we just want this. And it almost became so offensive that it would like, oh, okay, well, now there's raiding caravans, but then it's like the Bosmer moving destroyed wood around, and it devolves into this whole big thing. But it's like that story specifically made me kind of interested because it's referenced. It's not super in depth. We've never played it specifically in game, it always made me think that it felt, at least from the references, that some of the Bosmer might have been like, okay, like, whoa. Like, I actually am opposed to you just running amok here. Like, this is still not okay, even if we're not directly the ones doing it type of deal.
Right. Yeah. This is one of those things that just like the irony, some people notice their own individual irony in their beliefs, and some people don't.
And others don't care.
And some people care and some people don't. Some people
Right.
believe that it's the letter of the law and that's what's important. It doesn't matter the spirit of it, or they will even deny that there's a spirit of it at all. And some people believe that it's
just
like
literal and nothing more.
yeah, it's simply literal. That's what they only like. Our deity believes that this literal thing, and we have no idea why, but it doesn't matter. That's not our place to know. It's the place of the deity. So why try to justify it, right? So there's lots of different perspectives on this. So we have another document here. This one is called the Green Pact Bosmer Observations. I like this because it's from a different perspective. It's from Dinichthus Precious, which if you actually search this name, we don't know who this is. It's not like this is an individual who shows up in the stories in any other places. This is the only place they show up. And by the type of name, it seems like they're probably an imperial because it sounds like Latin. That's my assumption. So it says, a study into the Bosmer adherents of the Green Pact. And this is interesting because it's an external perspective by a non-Bosmer. The author of this text would like to make plain that there is a profound distinction to be made between the Wood Elves, observed by the author deep within Valenwood, and the Wood Elves who reside in other corners of Nirn. The observations here recorded are only meant to describe these wild Bosmer who adhere to what they call the old ways, and are not meant to apply to Wood Elves who have adjusted to life in normal society. So automatically is making a distinction between like, yeah, the ones who got out of this area have adjusted and they're normal like us.
Yeah, but it's a little condescending right at the gate.
Right. But the ones here, these ones are crazy.
Yeah.
And they believe some whack stuff, is basically what it's saying.
Right.
It goes on and says, the Wood Elves of Deep Valenwood, or Green Pact Bosmer, as they call themselves, can be described as fanatical in their devotion to the Green Pact. They eat only meat, including the bodies of their enemies slain in battle, and attack any who would harm the forest in which they live. Nevertheless, it would be inappropriate to characterize them as feral. In fact, they are highly intelligent. Imagine that. Highly curious. Weird, right? They're like actual other people. They're like other people.
It's strange how people are people even in this.
Highly rational individuals with rich cultural traditions vested in the forest and in their spiritual leaders, the storytellers or spinners. We haven't talked much about them, but it's part of their tradition and their culture and all that. In fact, while they can be extremely fierce in battle, they do not attack unless provoked and are more than hospitable to strangers in their midst. Oh, they're actually like regular people. They take their cues from the natural world with a mix of fear and respect, no doubt cultivated by tales of the kind of angry vengeance the Green is said to take on those who violate the pact. This is where it gets interesting. Indeed, from an early age, Pact Bosmer are raised to believe in the ooze. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning. A kind of purgatorial state reserved for Bosmer who violate the pact, and still more terrifying stories of the Green unleashing all of its wild power against Bosmeri clans who harm it. Part of this shows that some of their belief is if you do not stick to the pact, then you could be basically decomposed. You lose the ability to maintain your structure as an elf, and you go back to the ooze, which is one of their concepts of the origin of everything. Everything was an ooze, and then all of a sudden everything was given the ability to take form, like the story we talked about at the beginning.
And if you don't pay attention to it, you compost back to it.
Right. If you don't follow the rules, then Ifrei is done with you, and you get turned back into goo and just squished back in with the rest of the goo that hasn't formed yet.
Yeah, and they'll mix you up and come up with something to do with you later.
Yeah, so that's a piece of this as well. And again, it plays into this like religious kind of perspective where if you don't follow the thing that you're supposed to do and ask too many questions, then you're going to end up in a very terrible place.
Yeah, Yifri's going to get you.
And there's a lot of faiths that ascribe to that kind of thing. So to wrap this up, I have this is the weirdest story of the bunch. This one is called Visions of the Green Pact Bosmer by Morvis Andris, Insights into the Worldview of Followers of the Green Pact. All right, hold on to your butts. Here we go. Excerpts from the original 4-volume work recorded by Morvis Andrus, who studied, this isn't that long, so this is just a little bit, right? But this could be a longer document. We don't get the rest of it. Who studied the Green Pact Bosmer for 3 years in the First Era. So we're going back. Until he was killed in a morning war and devoured by the very clan he'd been studying. Remember the whole, like, eat the people you kill? Well,
it's got to be done.
Morvis ended up on the food side of that.
Waste not, want not.
Yeah. So, all right. So it goes on. It says, it just begins ... Like, clearly this is just starting in the middle. Feniriel was 100 years old when she consumed the glow frog of the swamps, and it showed her the upside down tree city of Heartgreen. Okay. It gets weirder. It was populated by elves who walked exclusively on their hands. ... So that's one little passage, just kind of like out there in the middle. Next passage, ... Fenirian, the thief, who successfully demanded more than 200 payments after invoking the right of theft, was once said to have a vision after climbing into a tree that had appeared in the middle of the forest. The tree had purple leaves, and as Venerian told it, when he sat among them, they gave off the most pleasant fragrance. The sweet scent lulled his mind into a state, and while in this state, he saw a circular grove of trees. The further he went into the grove, the wider the circle became, so that he could never reach its true center. As he wandered, he met the most beautiful spirit, and when she spoke, her sentences began with their last word. She's like Yoda. So they made circles. River, come lie with me by the... She beckoned. Fenirian only came to his senses when, slumped in a stupor from the powerful odor of the leaves, he fell from the branches of the tree. He survived the fall, but broke his leg, and ending his thieving career, he spent the rest of his life searching the forest for the tree with the purple leaves, but never found it. ... And then the final 2 paragraphs here. Then I asked the tree thane whether it is right for the Pact Bosmer to say they see these visions, and whether it wouldn't be better to say they imagine them. It's clear that these strange apparitions of cities and groves and other such wonders don't exist either on Nirn or in Oblivion. The tree thane took a long drink of whatever foul firmament milk was currently in fashion and looked at his feet and then at the sky. You say the world ends at what you can see with your eyes. We say that it is where the world begins. So we're talking like religious context and stuff, and influences and similarities among different religious beliefs. This is very clear that if at least you go back to the first age, there's a lot of influence from drug stuff.
I was going to say, like, this starts to get in the area of because again, this world has magic and stuff like that, and tangible gods that they deal with. But are they just, licking funny frogs and seeing stuff? Right.
Are they just like, singing Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and just like putting LSD on their tongues and just tripping out? And that's like opening their minds to the rest of the universe, which is more real than where we are now, dude.
Right. So it's like, it's one of the things that I love about this series, because it does the total parallels to a real world that we live in, where it's like, yeah, but they could just be doped out of their mind. Right. Or maybe this is a thing.
Or maybe being doped out of your mind helps you see into the actual reality of things in this kind of world.
Show you more because you didn't realize. It's all very weird. Mm-hmm. What's real, what isn't, and trying to discover and understand what's what, because there are no just straightforward answers necessarily in the Elder Scrolls. Very much like it's very hard to get just straight black and white answers as it is in real life.
Yeah. So, yes. So the Green Pact, to sum it up, is probably some drugged up fever dream from worshippers ages ago that has now solidified into a religion, but has some serious qualities to it. For example, the Wild Hunt, which we'll talk about more next week, and the ability to change shape sometimes, and
right, and
some of that stuff.
Because of that, you can't solely. Well, I mean, they, as we just heard in a couple of these passages, the quote unquote civilized areas kind of do write that stuff off. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But there is, the Wild Hunt, for example, is one of the things. It's like there is a tangible benefit beyond just like, well, maybe we just haven't tapped into it yet or something like that. There are moments in the series where it technically has been tapped into it, and it's not so much metaphorical. It gets weird and things can get pretty aggressive, and sometimes usually it's the most extreme circumstances, but there is some at least degree of reality. It's all with the weird metaphysical. Is it drugs, or are they actually like doing something like that?
Right. Yeah. And Rob says in chat, I mean, in our world, that's why people will do mushrooms. They acknowledge it's a hallucinogen, but they believe it connects them to some very real spirits. Yeah, exactly. Totally. But lots of people have all sorts of different beliefs about these things. That's personally exactly am very skeptical. So the idea that like there's spirits out there or there's like ghosts, how do ghosts even stay on a planet if they're not interacting physically with anything? The planet's rotating and moving through space at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, but
Ghost lore.
as far as I'm concerned, like there's no spirit stuff. You're not tapping into anything. It's just messing with what your brain does, because your brain defines all the experience that you have. Everything that is coming through your eyes and your ears are all filtered through the chemicals in your brain. If you mess with those chemicals, guess what? You're messing with the way your brain perceives things, right? Like,
right.
That's the way I see it. But I mean, you're welcome to disagree with me. And some people absolutely will. They'll be like, nope, there's a ghost in my house and I commune with the spirits every week. You're like, that's cool. Doesn't work for me, but all right.
Right. But, and then now the thing that I find so interesting when you relate it to, there's a lot more just like, oh, well, how much can you get in touch with that necessarily in real life? Whereas in game, you have these tangible, literal demigods that come down and do weird shit to people all the time.
Right. If you just choose like 10 dungeons or caves to go in, one of them is going to have ghosts in it. Right. So at least
it's the potential for the ceiling of weird stuff is much higher in Nern. Right. So that's just it. So it's mirrored in real life with some of this stuff, but then with a not questionable supernatural element, it's like, well, yeah, but is this just one of the ones that's real or not? Like for them type of deal.
Yeah, because it totally could be. Or it could totally not be also, which is great. And I feel like a lot of times with this stuff, they will leave it open. They will write something like this that makes you go, okay, yeah, everything looks like it's some sort of drug-fueled dream. But it's almost like they try to put a leg on both sides of the argument, because you'll end up with some other story later on, and the thing that they had the vision about actually comes true. And like, okay, maybe it is both. Maybe both, and because it's a video game and you can make it both. And that gives the writers, it allows the writers to keep us on our toes. Like, we don't know what to expect. Maybe it is real. So yeah, there you go. I think that's it for the Green Pact. Anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that actually was pretty exhaustive. I was glad we got to cover that and, kind of delve into something that we oftentimes reference, but have never really had a full hour to discuss necessusly.
Yeah. I'm also excited because my room is green. Which you can see if you go watch the video version of this on YouTube. That's my little pitch at the end. Lotus, you got anything else going on you want to share before we head out?
No, not really. I've been continuing my playthrough of Daggerfall, which has been shockingly fun compared to some of the other.
I saw you were talking to some you busted into some lady's room.
I did just,
and you were like, "Why are you half clothed?"
Didn't know which room was mine. So
and you were like, "Oh wait, no, this is your room." Of course, you would be half clothed in your own room because it's not in my business. Okay, bye.
Yeah, my character might actually be really really not much of a hero and should probably be taken off the streets.
Isn't that all of our characters on some level?
I mean, yeah, I really play up the murder hobo thing when I play these games. And then we didn't actually get to record Tales last night, so the episode will be a little delayed, but we'll be recording this weekend, possibly with another guest. So we got that to discuss all the happenings in Elder Scrolls Online and such. But otherwise, just kind of doing my thing with this and getting some game time when I can.
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah, I've been playing games, I keep messing with all my mods in Skyrim VR in order to do weird stuff. So come hang out with me during my live streams or check out I have a sub YouTube channel. I have so many YouTube channels. I've got a bunch for the different podcasts. I've separated everything out now. My main YouTube is now going to be focused on like news and stuff. There's a YouTube that's Robots Radio Funny Stuff. That's where all my wacky VR hijinks is going to go. Or you can check the live stream for that. But yep, been doing a lot of that stuff. It's been a lot of fun. And just trying to spend more time with the community, playing games and hanging out and stuff, because I don't do enough of it. I'm busy with lots of other stuff, but trying to get the time in there. You gotta schedule fun time in, right? Gotta do it.
You do, and there aren't enough hours in a day.
There aren't. But hopefully you guys are having fun and playing games, and lots of our community over on the Discord playing games. Lots of new members in our ESO guild joining each other. There's even people playing Fallout 76 looking to play with each other. All sorts of awesome stuff. So go check that out if you haven't already joined us on the Discord. And we'll be back next week talking about the Wild Hunt. So more wacky Bosmer stuff. Until then, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next time.
Have a good one.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach me on Twitter at robots_radio or Lotus of Doom at Lotus of Doom. Also, you can join us on the Robots Radio Discord channel. You can easily just search Robots Radio Discord on Google or check the description underneath the podcast. Also, this podcast is recorded live every week on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on the Robots Radio channels on Twitch, YouTube, and on Facebook. So just search Robots Radio on any of those platforms. Come join us. We'd love to chat with you while we record the show, or before or after. Either way, just come hang out with us. And if you're looking for more information about my shows and the shows on the Robots Radio Network, go to robotsradio.net for all the information about all the shows on the network, including the Robots Radio Rocket Club, where I help both new and existing podcasters to grow their shows, build their audiences, and create the best podcasts they possibly can. All of that at robotsradio.net. We'll see you next time.